Another thing that I do when I purchase properties, I always make sure, because honestly, it doesn't matter what real estate strategy you do, whether you're a buy and hold guy, you fix and flip, wholesaling, whatever. You make your money when you buy. You have to buy the asset right up front. So one thing that I always do is I always make sure that if I'm buying my properties, it has to also cash flow as a traditional rental.
This is episode number 74 of the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast. Are you an investor that's looking to have your home professionally managed? Go to cohostit.com for more information. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Like any exceptional host, we all strive for 5-star reviews, so please go on over to iTunes and let us know what you enjoy, as it really helps support the show. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation, to connect with the community. Hey, what is going on, Host Nation? I'm super excited to be back again with you this week. I want to say first off that I'm really sorry for missing our Thursday episode. Typically, I always release them at 5 a.m. on Thursday mornings, and then it's around 8 a.m. for the YouTube videos. But I missed yesterday. I am very, very sorry. It's been actually really busy with the properties that we have been onboarding. We have some more additional properties that we do plan on taking on. We just relaunched our coaching program and got a bunch of new people in, so that's been really exciting. And we are actively still growing our management company. So we are doing master lease investing and our turnkey master lease investor program, but we still are growing our management company as well. So we've been working and doing some really cool projects to be able to get out into the marketplace and try to find more clients. All of this while still working a full-time job in the Coast Guard, but luckily I do have an amazing team behind me now. John, my business partner, and then our amazing media team that is helping really just get all of this content out there. In this episode, I had the special honor of speaking with TJ Tijani. TJ is a BRRRR investor, and for those of you that don't know, that aren't a part of the Bigger Pockets community, BRRRR is for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and then repeat. So TJ is a real estate investor, and he's also a short-term rental manager based out of the Houston, Texas area. He has 14 units total, 7 of which he owns, and he built these up through BRRRR investing, and then 7 are master leased. So in this episode, TJ shares his experience of BRRRR investing to master lease investing, how to stand out in a crowded market, and the costs associated with buy and hold investing versus master lease investing. Still, even to this day, I still get people that say master lease investing is a scam. No one's saying that to me, obviously, but I see in the Facebook groups, because we're always on there, lots of people saying, oh, it's a scam, all these things. Really, though, when you look at master lease investing, it is just another form of being able to acquire properties without having to spend a whole lot of money. You do have to take into account that, there is going to be a little bit less profit than if you did own it. But that's really where it comes down to how much are you able to make on the return of the property versus how much you actually have to spend investing into a property to acquire it. Obviously, TJ has found a really nice strategy because he is a BRRRR investor. He is someone that can go out, find these properties that do need work. He's able to invest into them. He's able to then refinance out of the property, get his cash back, and now he's essentially acquired a property where he is able to gain that equity and that appreciation. And he can potentially make a little bit more profit because he doesn't have to pay a rental payment. But master lease investing is perfect for the investor that doesn't have any experience in flipping or trying to find those really good off-market deals. And you're just looking for something where you can pick it up, get in very cheaply and quickly, and then start making a profit. If you like my show notes for this episode, go to shorttermsage.com/STR74. Or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. In this episode, I have the special honor of speaking with TJ Tijani. TJ, would you please introduce yourself to the Host Nation and let them know who you are and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
What's going on, Host Nation? Thank you so much for having me too, by the way. It's a true honor to be here and have this interview and to share my story with your audience. Again, kind of like he said, my name's TJ Tijani. I've been in real estate, actually. I bought my first piece of real estate in 2015. At the time, I was still working as an engineer full time. And so my background actually is in mechanical engineering. I got an engineering degree from the University of Houston. with a mathematics minor. And I worked in oil and gas for some time, and I did that. It's not like I hated what I do. I actually didn't hate it. I traveled quite a bit. My job required me to be offshore quite a bit. I was gone probably about 65% of the year working on the rigs. But whenever I was in town, I took advantage of my time in town, and I was investing, and I was looking for opportunities within the real estate space. And so then came 2017, and when the market kind of took a dip around 2016, my portfolio is with ExxonMobil. So I worked for an oil and gas service company, but we worked with the ExxonMobil team, and that was what my portfolio was with. And when they kind of slow down on their drilling and their completions because of the market, then we kind of didn't have much projects to support the amount of engineers on the team. And so I was given an opportunity to kind of move to a different role within the company, but I really wasn't feeling that role. That role would require more time in the office and about half my salary. So I decided to bet on myself. And then I decided to go into real estate full time. At the time, I had 5 rental properties. So, I had, income coming from the rental properties, and I kept my expenses pretty low. So my income from my rentals were actually taking care of my expenses. And that's kind of what kind of gave me that confidence to say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do this real estate thing full time. And so I got into the short-term rental space, not even necessarily because I was looking for it. I honestly was just doing market research on marketing within real estate, and I came across short-term rentals. I came across a video about short-term rentals and Airbnb, and I decided like, oh wow, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and give it a shot with this particular property that I have. And at the time, I was just doing the rehab on the property. I had 2 properties actually. I was going to do a rehab on one and keep it as a rental, and I was going to flip the other one. So I ended up still flipping that one, but the one I was going to keep as a rental, I decided to try the short-term rental route. So, and it was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath property. It was a 1,700 square feet. I gutted it and remodeled it, and then I furnished it. And I was really nervous to see if this thing was going to work. And I never forget, when I furnished the property, I listed it. And the day I launched the property, I listed it, and I turned my phone to just kind of upside down to just kind of see what would happen. And I started watching a movie. And, within the hour, I got an inquiry, and the excitement just from that one inquiry, it's like, oh, wow, somebody's actually interested in my property. And he didn't end up booking, but the very next day I woke up with 2 bookings. So I was like, you know what? I think I can sink my teeth into this. And the next month I got another unit. That one I rented. This one I owned. My very first one I owned. That one I rented. I started learning about rental arbitrage. I started learning about master leasing and control without ownership. And so I decided to go that route as well. So I do both. I definitely am what you consider a landlord host, but I also am what you consider a rental arbitrage host as well. And so that's how I got into the space, and it's been great ever since. It's been pretty life changing for me.
So going back, you had this job that was, you had the opportunity to advance in your career, but it was going to require more time from you. You're trading your time for more money. But you said, hey, I'm dabbling in real estate right now. I've got about 5 properties, and I'm ready to take a leap. I mean, those properties, those were long-term rentals. How much were you cash flowing on them?
Yeah, those are long-term rentals. Those are long-term rentals, and 2 of them were on a super low interest rate at 15-year notes. And I was cash flowing. I probably average about $400 to $500 for each property a month. One of them, the lowest one, what I believe I was cash flowing like 350, something like that. And so, but yeah, I'll probably average about $400 to $500 cash flow when you consider all of them.
And how long and what was that process to get those initial 5 properties for you? Did you have to spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time? Like, what was that journey just getting to that, those 5?
No, great question. So there's 2 ways, and I like to kind of look at this time versus money trade-off when you look to buy assets and buy real estate assets to keep for rental properties. Take the very first rental property I purchased, for example. I bought that property with my money. What I mean by that is that property didn't need any work. That property was ready to go. Then it was nicely rehabbed, new AC, new roof, new everything. I went ahead. I bought that property with 20% down. I bought it for 92,000. I put 20% down with closing costs, came out to about $22,000. I put that down. Within a week after I closed on that property, I put a for rent sign in front of it, and I had it rented out within a week. And that my mortgage was about 840. My tenant was paying 1240. So that delta was my cash flow, right? And so that from the point that I closed on that property to get it to a point to where it started cash flowing and putting a tenant in it, it didn't take much time, but it did take a sizable down payment. Then take the my very first Airbnb. I remodeled that property. I bought that property in distress, It was actually unlivable. I completely gutted that property, and it took time. Now that I had to, leverage a private lender, had the private lender send his appraiser. I had to go through the rehab scope of work with the appraiser. Then once we closed on it, then I rehabbed it. So that process took about 3 months, and then an extra month to refinance it because my private lender's money is expensive. So I leveraged a private lender and I refinanced it right away. Pretty much the BRRRR strategy, right? And so with that, that took time for me to get there. But I bought that property with literally $0 out of my pocket because the spread from what I bought it for versus what it's worth once the property's fixed up was such a good spread. I was able to leverage a private lender, and I was still within 70% loan of value. So even when I closed on a property on the refinance, I captured 30% with the equity right away, and then I can make that property a short-term rental property. So, but to get to that point where I closed on that property to where it's actually started cash flowing, that was about a 4 month process. So that took time, but it didn't take much of my money at all. Actually none of my money. So there's like this time versus money trade-off. So I started learning and perfecting how to buy real estate with my time. And that's how I actually built that portfolio of 5 properties. That first one was the only one that I bought with my money. The rest of the 4 I bought with my time, and I rehabbed all of them.
So you were the one doing the rehabbing yourself, or were you hiring that out?
Oh no, I hired it out. We hired a contractor. I think the most I've ever done in a rehab is just swing hammers during demo, just because I like doing that, smashing stuff. So, but
Right.
outside of that, definitely had contractors for each. And at first, when I first got started, I hired a general contractor, like he had his subs and all that. But now I'm at a point where I've done enough rehabs, and now I actually GC all my stuff. So now I have subs that I use, and I GC all my projects now.
Now, what was the learning curve like trying to like that can be pretty scary maybe for a lot of people thinking like, hey, I want to get into, I want to be able to own property, but I don't want to spend as much money as you did like on that first one doing a turnkey, more of like a turnkey property. You want something to, you want to find distress, you want to be able to add value. Like you said, you're not putting in your own money, you're doing the burst strategy. For those of you that are listening, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. You're basically just able to take the equity out to be able to get your, basically pay for itself. But that can be really scary for a lot of people. Buying a turnkey versus buying a BRRRR is completely different. And so what was that experience like for that first like BRRRR property? Did you have a lot of knowledge or a lot of experience?
So two things that helped me out with that first one, because it is a scary undertaking, especially for your first one. One thing that really helped me out for that first burst strategy is it wasn't an extensive rehab. That rehab was only like a $15,000 rehab for that first burst strategy one. It was only a $15,000 rehab. And on top of that, the second thing that really helped me out and kind of gave me the confidence. Well, first of all, I was doing a whole lot of research. I was kind of had that engineering mindset. We kind of get into this analysis paralysis kind of situation. And so it wasn't until I joined a real estate group here, a local real estate group here in Houston, and that was kind of what they focused on. They focused on buying, rehabbing property. They focused on cash flow. They focused on owning assets. And so with them, I joined that group, and they had a vendors list as well, like vendors list that were approved with the group that said, okay, these contractors are good. So that kind of gave me the confidence. And I didn't want my very first one to be an extensive rehab. So I purchased the property. Didn't need much rehab. It was mainly cosmetic stuff, and that was my very first burst strategy. The way that one ended up working out, because it doesn't always work out to where it's $0 out of pocket. But if you do it right, it could be minimum kind of dollars out of pocket. I actually bought that house in the same neighborhood as my first one. But that first one, I put $22,000 out of pocket. But at the second one, I put $5,000 out of pocket because I was able to leverage a private lender, and I used the burst strategy on that second one. So what helped me out, what made it not so scary was that, for one, it wasn't an extensive rehab. It was mainly cosmetics. Two, I kind of had the backing of like a local group that had vendors list that I can kind of call if I have any issues or anything seems scary or I had any questions. Or how do you do this? What do I do next? What do I do next? So that kind of helped me. But I tell you, that very first burst strategy that I did taught me more than all the studying that I've done in real estate, all the videos that I've watched. It taught me more, and that really gave me the confidence to go out and do more of them. That what that does is I prove to myself that, I can actually do this. I can actually own assets, and I can actually scale this thing. So that helped me out a lot.
Now, what was that really tipping point though when you started looking at like, because I mean, if you're able to successfully, pick up properties, not have to put a lot of capital down, there is that time, but so you found how to be able to do it and how to be able to scale. But then what was that tipping point where it's like, hey, I can turn these into short-term rentals, or I can even just start master leasing properties?
Yeah. So for me, that tipping point for when I kind of realized that, you know what, hey, I can actually earn more money cash on with these properties, making them short-term rentals. Um, at first, it was just when I started learning about short-term rentals, when I kind of got turned on to it in the midst of my market research in real estate. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna try it on this. And at first, though, my first mindset was like, man, this might be a big undertaking because furnishing a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house, a 1,700 square feet house for your first short term rental, that might be a lot. So I was a little bit worried about that. I actually remember while I was furnishing, you could imagine it's a mess. There's boxes everywhere, it's furniture everywhere. I remember standing in the middle of that house and I literally almost had like a not a panic attack, but I was like, man, I think I might be in over my head here. Like, what am I doing? And so I just went ahead and just when I saw it through, and I'm glad I did. But it was it clicked for me when I started doing market research and I started looking at other listings in the area before I decided to make it a short-term rental. I looked on Airbnb and I said, okay, this guy's making okay, this is how much he's charging. And I said, okay, wait, if I'm only 50% occupied, man, I'll make more than I would if I was just to make this property a traditional rental. So I'd say, I'm just go ahead and just, for me, um, I decided to just take that leap. It's just, I was like, okay, whether if it works, great. If it doesn't work, I'll just sell all this furniture, take the loss, and I'll just make it, a regular rental property or student housing because it's actually really close to the University of Houston campus. So I was either going to make a student house or just make it a traditional rental. And if it didn't work, but that I decided to just go for it.
Why do you think that your mindset shifted? Because there's a lot of people that get into real estate and they don't ever change their path. They don't ever get into this. Do you think that the mindset of just doing BRRRRs and being able to acquire properties is different than the mindset of turning it into a short-term rental? Because now you're a manager for these properties. Is it a really big leap or difference from doing the BRRRRs to doing the short-term rentals?
Oh man, so absolutely. And it's a complete mindset shift because as you know, it's a totally different process to just have a traditional rental versus a short-term rental. There are pros and cons to doing both, honestly. One's a lot more hands-on and one's not, but one has the potential to earn you at least 3 times the amount as a traditional rental if you're doing it right. And so I realized that traditional rental route, it's easier. And I was already doing that. It's make it nice. I usually tend to replace everything. If I'm remodeling, if the roof is even skeptical, if it's super old, I'm replacing. If the water heater, I'm replacing. Because at the end of the day, I don't want a call a year later and say, oh, this is broken. So I make sure that I handle things up front. And then it's like almost like set it and forget it, especially if you have a property manager managing it for you. Bring a tenant brings their own furniture, they bring their own, a lot of time I didn't even put a fridge in there. A lot of time they bring their own refrigerator. And so that's that, right? But then on the short-term rental side, now you're handling a lot of you handling turnovers, you're handling security issues, you're handling furnishings, you're handling cleaners, all that stuff. And so I realized that, you know what, I can earn more money as a short-term rental. So if I can learn how to really automate it, if I can learn how to build systems around it to run it, and free up my time, and I can grow this business without necessarily having to scale my time with it, then why don't I do this? And why don't I go this route and stick with this route? And that was kind of the mindset and the tipping point for me when I realized that, you know what, it's a lot more hands-on process doing the short-term rentals. But if I can systematize it though, if I can add systems and build a team to manage it for me, um, and still make more money, then I want to do this, and I can get to the cap. Because at the end of the day, for me, it was all about cash flow. I wasn't working a full-time job anymore. I was trying to build something to earn cash from my job. My goal at first was like, I want to start netting. Um, I want to meet that. I was fortunate enough to make 6 figures out of college. It required me to be gone quite a bit. I was traveling quite a bit, but I was making good money. And so my goal was that, you know what, I wanted to meet that. That was my initial goal. I want to meet that income that I was making, and then I can go from there. And so I wanted to get more cash flow. So I decided to really stick to the short-term rental route and build a team and build systems to run it.
So you've got these properties. You started short-term renting it, and then you got your first master lease property. What was your thought process? Do you feel like it was a completely different world trying to go in and lease a property, or why didn't you just stick with purchasing properties, fixing them up, not having to put your own money in, doing the BRRRR and scaling that way?
Man, great question. So, for one thing, that process in terms of getting these master leases is a totally different process. It took me completely out of my comfort zone in order to do that. And at the time, I was horrible at talking to people. I was horrible at talking to complexes, even landlords. I was not good at talking to. I remember one occurrence. I was talking to these. It was a town. It was a condo complex. It was a small apartment. It was like condo. They had about 50 units, and it was a great location, close to the downtown area. And I went in and I talked to the office manager, and I was like, yeah, so I do, I'm trying to see if I can do a corporate lease. We list this property on various sites. And she said, oh my God, you're one of those Airbnb guys. You do Airbnb? And then she said, and she did this is literally what she said, I don't have time for this. And obviously, I could tell she probably was having a frustrating day already. But I was in her office. She said, "I don't have time for this," and she got up and just walked out of her own office and left me there. I was just sitting there. And I was like, "What just happened?" And so that was a heck of an experience. So I realized that it's all about the repetition. But I got better, and I got better. The more people I talked to, the more I talked to folks, I got better at positioning not only just myself, but my business as well to get these leases. Because when I rent these properties and I do a master lease, I rent them under a business. We do corporate leases. So I had to get good at that. And so the other question that you posed, that was a great question. So I actually still do the BRRRR strategy, right? I do that, but I also do rental arbitrage, because at the end of the day, there's pros and cons to doing both. I like the aspect of owning my assets. For one thing, my margins on the ones that I own are better. I own the asset, so I get the benefit of all of owning the asset. So that's great, but it takes time for me to get there, especially now that I BRRRR all my properties. It takes time for me to get to the point to where it's cash flowing. So if that's my only strategy, then it's gonna take a long time for me to reach those unit goals and those income goals. So that's why I play both sides. So I'm gonna grow properties that I want to own, but I'm also going to do rental arbitrage, because that's what allows me to take the business to the next level. That's what allowed me to scale the business a lot faster. So that's why I'm playing both sides. I love my rental arbitrage properties because they great cash flow, and they allow me to scale the business a lot quicker. I just locked in 4 units in the Midtown area. We furnished one. We're going to be rolling out the next 3 here shortly. And we did that on a corporate lease, and I got 4 units right away. As soon as you get the lease, furnish it, you cash flow it, so within a week. And I always give myself a week at the most to get the property ready to go. And versus, owning it, it takes time for me to get there. Right now, I'm remodeling at the moment, 4 doors I'm remodeling. One's a duplex and 2 single family houses that are on the same lot. Great locations, but they're currently being remodeled right now. It's taking me time to get to the point to where it's going to cash flow. But on the rental arbitrage side, I get to scale the business a lot faster. That's why I like both sides, and I play both sides. It's been working out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I think you brought up, something that we're always preaching on this podcast, TJ, is we call it the RCB model of investing. Yeah, rental arbitrage, co-hosting, and buy and hold. Each model has a different strategy or different, pros and cons. What you're saying here is like you like the buy and holds because it's a cash preserver. You get that equity, you get that appreciation, but it does take longer. It's not as easily scalable because there is that time involved. But the rental arbitrage, you're just getting that straight cash flow, which you're able to then invest into more buy and hold properties, or just be able to reach your financial numbers. So I think it's really really wise of you to diversify yourself. A lot of people that we talk to, sometimes they're like, I only do this or I only do that. But so what's your thought process on people that say rental arbitrage is riskier, or, I only do buy and holds? Since you're doing both, what is your mindset with the two?
I tell people that wants to do either or. If you're strictly on one side, then that's okay. That's your prerogative. That's what you want to do. I'm definitely not knocking that hustle whatsoever, because it's great to do rental arbitrage. I mean, just the idea that you can cash flow from a property that you don't own, that's great. Like that, if you were to say that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you're like, what are you talking about? That's impossible. You have to own the asset. So just for that simple fact as well, that's great. If you want to build your business on rental arbitrage, awesome. If you want to build it strictly on buy and hold, that's great. One of my students that I work with on a one-on-one basis, he owns all of his. He said, "Man, I just want to own all of mine. I want to own all of mine." And that's what works for him. He has 10 units right now. and he bought all of them. One's a sixplex, one was a fourplex, and he's doing pretty well with those, and that's what he wants to do. And he said, "Man, I'm not really feeling it. I don't know, just something about I don't own it. He can't just get his mind around it, but that's okay if that's what you want to do." I say, explore both sides. If you want to do rental arbitrage, that's amazing because especially if you run your numbers and you know exactly what you're doing with your numbers, and you can confirm and you do your research to know that, okay, this is going to be a good location. This is a great asset. This will cash flow pretty well. Then build that. But if you want to own, then own. There was a debate I was getting into. I guess not a debate, more so a discussion. They were like, well, you're putting all this money down on these properties. Your rate of return's a lot less. You're going to put down a down payment and then making an Airbnb. And I'm like, okay, I understand that, but that's not how I buy them. The way I buy them like an investor. I buy them with little to no money out of pocket. So if I can build that, if I can grow something and buy an asset, get instant equity capture, add value to the asset, let it cash flow as a short-term rental with little to no money out of pocket, why won't I just keep doing that? While I'm building my short-term rental arbitrage side as well, why won't I play both sides? So the way I see it, if you know how to do it and you know how to do it right the right way, then why not do both sides? Another thing that I do when I purchase properties, I always make sure, because honestly, it doesn't matter what real estate strategy you do, whether you're a buy and hold guy, you're fix and flip, wholesaling, whatever, you make your money when you buy. You have to buy the asset right up front. So one thing that I always do is I always make sure that if I'm buying my properties, it has to also cash flow as a traditional rental. It's not just, yeah, it will cash flow as a short-term rental 100%, but will it cash flow as a traditional rental? For one thing, you never know what could happen. Maybe there's a deed restriction that might be impacted that comes in that neighborhood, or an HOA restriction that comes in that neighborhood that will not allow you to make that property a short-term rental anymore, but you own it, right? You own it. So what you're going to do, you're going to sell it, or what are you going to do? Will it cash flow when you have a traditional tenant in it? That's one of the criteria that I use. If it won't cash flow with a traditional tenant, I'm not buying it. Another reason is because the lenders most of these lenders now, there are more and more coming on that actually consider short-term rental income, but most of them don't. They go off of traditional rental income still, which has been the way for years. And so those are the ones that's the numbers that they go off of. So that's why I buy my assets as if it was a traditional rental property.
Hey, this is Julian, and I wanted to be able to give you our newest book, Airbnb Secrets Revealed, How to Build a Fortune on Airbnb Without Owning Property. In this book, we talk about the concepts of rental arbitrage investing, as well as co-hosting, and how you can build a business leveraging other people's properties. This book is perfect for the new short-term rental investor, and it's something that I wish that I had when I first started, as it would have saved me a lot of trouble and helped me to understand how to be able to leverage the power of short-term rental investing in your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like to get our newest book completely for free, go to shorttermsage.com/free book. Now, back to the show. What do you think, when people say one is riskier than the other, what do you say? Do you say that it's riskier to purchase a property where, it could go under or regulations might change, or that it's riskier for, master lease investing because you're putting, spending money on furniture, they could cancel your lease? What are your thoughts on which is a riskier investment?
I think if I had to pick which one's riskier, I would definitely say master leasing is riskier, because at the end of the day, you control the property, but you don't own it. And at the end of the day, the owners have the final say. So if they want to cancel your lease, they can. If they don't want to renew your lease, they can. So I would say I would put that at the more riskier spot. But that just means that you need to, for one thing, make sure that you rent it the right way, rent it the right way up front. Secondly, make sure you run your numbers up front to make sure that that property actually makes sense as a short-term rental. Do your research, whether you use AirDNA or whether you do it manually, by looking at listing and dissecting listings in that area. However you go about it, you need to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into up front. I actually always try to do 2-year leases as well, and they usually give me better deals for doing 2-year leases. So I always try to do 2-year leases. And do what you say you're gonna do. Like, make sure that you're screening your guests properly. You're really minimizing disruption within that community, and they'll renew your lease. My people that I do master leases with, they love the fact that I want to come back. They're like, oh, that, well, you're good, we love you, good. So you want definitely want to make sure that you're approaching it the right way up front. But if I also say one was riskier, then I would say that the master lease is riskier. On the owning side, just make sure that you're running your numbers right, that you're buying it right up front. Just like I mentioned earlier, if you're going to own it, don't just depend on short-term rental income. Run it as if it would be a traditional rental. If it was a traditional rental and you will be upside down, then I wouldn't recommend buying that asset, to be quite honest with you. So that's kind of how you can kind of hedge your risk on that side. Just make sure that you buy it right up front. So if you buy it right up front, there's a saying that goes, if you buy the real estate correctly up front, it's really hard to mess it up. It's really hard to mess it up. So that's why I would kind of put the master lease. And if I had to pick one, that's definitely a riskier play.
And do you think that it's the same for, master lease investing? Do you think that it really is very dependent on location or the type of property? Like, can you get into a bad master lease, or is it, because you're able to get your return on investment within a much relatively shorter time, that there really isn't ever a quote unquote bad master lease?
I think it could be. I mean, we know that location definitely matters. Location's a big deal. Um, this is why you have to do your research. If it is at a location that that maybe it's not that it won't work, but it's not working as well as you thought it would. Maybe it's not cash flowing as well as you thought it was. And yeah, I mean that's it could be risky. It definitely could be. A bad master lease play. Thankfully, I have not got into a bad master lease play because there's a lot of research that I do going into it, and I'm very versed in the Houston market here. Houston is a big city, and we're comprised of loops. So I done mastered the numbers within a certain area within the loop, which is where all of my units are. They're within that area. So I kind of niche down within that area, and it's really hard to mess it up when and you studied that market for so long. It's kind of hard to mess that up. So I keep my units within that realm. That's why I've gotten offers to a lot of opportunities to delve outside, go outside in different areas, and I always turn them down because this is exactly where I like to niche down on, and these are the numbers that I've mastered. This is where I know works. So it's definitely possible to get into a bad master lease play. It definitely is. But that's why you have to do that research. There are another way to get into a really bad master lease play is if you take down that lease the wrong way. I got a call, man, it's about 8 months ago from now. And it was a guy, he called me, he said, man, TJ, I should have talked to you before I did this Airbnb thing. And I was like, wow, what happened? He said, man, he started renting out this apartment complex in downtown Houston, phenomenal location. But he rented it under his name, just like any tenant would. And within a month, they found his listing on Airbnb, and he got into a lot of trouble. Not only did they evict him, even though he was willingly ready to wanting to leave, they put an eviction on him, took him to court, and then he signed a 12-month lease, and all 12 months they want all the payments of all 12 months paid up front. So he got into trouble for doing that, and he went about it the wrong. That I would also consider a bad master lease play because you didn't necessarily go into it the right way, and you took that lease down the wrong way. So there are definitely ways to botch it. There's definitely ways. That's why you got to get educated on knowing how to take these leases down the right way.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that this person didn't do the pre-qualification for the property. They didn't see, can I get a corporate lease? Am I allowed? Do I have that corporate lease addendum on there? Am I allowed to market the property? And so he just said, hey, I hear, Sean from Airbnb Automator, I hear TJ, I hear Julian talking about, picking up all these properties. Well, I'm just gonna go sign on a property and then I'll turn it into one. And but then that's where a lot of those issues come. That's where the trust comes into. That's where people like that first manager that you went to, as they said, oh, you're one of those Airbnb guys. That's what's kind of given the bad rap.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. That's exactly what he did actually.
So
100%.
what has been the most challenging part of scaling your short-term rental business? Because right now you're at that we kind of call it the stress points of a short-term rental operator, where you had your first property, your first three, it's pretty easily manageable, but now you're at that you're at around 14 properties, so you've kind of moved past that first stress point where it's like the messaging, maybe the cleaning, but what has been the most challenging parts that you've faced along to get into 14 properties right now?
Man, I think probably probably making sure that I'm screening these guests properly. I think that's probably been the biggest learning curve. On my very second, my second short-term rental property was doing so well. It was in downtown Houston, doing amazing. I was 98% occupied, and I wanted to get to 100% occupancy. And so there was somebody that was ready to book those last 2 days. And I just had that mindset of, oh man, I want to get these last 2 days booked. And the person had a very incomplete profile. Didn't even have a profile picture. His profile was brand new. Just created the profile. He didn't even give a good reason why he wanted to book the place. He just said that, hey, I'm coming in the area, want to stay. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll let him stay. And I realized quickly that, first of all, not all money is good money. Second of all, I have to make sure that I am properly screening this guest. He ended up having the biggest party in this one bedroom apartment, and it was like 40 people, and so much so that the concierge at the complex called me and said, "Hey, TJ, something's going on at your unit, man, at your apartment." So I had to go over there, and the hallway was filled with people. We had other people living in the apartments coming out the door, like, "What is going on here?" And I felt so bad, and so we had to get everybody kicked out. Got Airbnb involved. Thankfully, nothing like major was broken. It was just a big mess, but nothing major was broken, thankfully. And so I think going through that, and then also just over time, just knowing and understanding how to properly screen guests has been a learning curve. But I would like to say, kind of gotten pretty good at that now. We got a whole lot better at that, and that's one thing. And one thing I like to tell people, like especially when you're scaling this business, don't don't scale too fast before your systems are down right, because if you scale on top of a broken system, it's just going to make things worse. It's going to make your business worse, and you're not going to get the reviews that you need to keep this business relevant. So make sure that your systems are tight and are down packed, before you actually look to start scaling this thing to another level. So that's one thing that I had to make sure that I did it as well. But yeah, I think just making sure and screening the guests and making sure we get the right people in there. That's probably been the biggest learning curve, because that's always it's one of those things that it's never just completely fixed, right? It's always something that you're learning, you're getting better at, and you're going to be approached with different scenarios. You're going to be, you're going to have to make decisions based on that. So I think that's probably been the biggest learning curve.
And what is some of that what does your screening process look like? Because there's Air, Airbnb, especially right now, they're trying to limit the amount of interaction with guests, and different platforms have different types of um, lack of requirements. So what is your screening process that you've been able to add on top of what is currently available?
Yeah, so we look at a few things. Like I mentioned earlier, we look at how new the listing was created. We look at if they have a completed profile. Is their profile completed? We look at where they're from, because a lot of times not that we don't accept local guests, but we ask a lot of questions, and we make sure that that local guest is actually here for good intentions, because a lot of local guests, most of the issues that we have are from local guests. And so because they don't want to mess up their house, they just want to rent an Airbnb to throw a party or whatever. So we have a pretty, we have a line of questioning when it comes to local guests. But we try not to kind of outcast everybody, because at the end of the day, Houston's a big city, and there's a lot of suburbs, and all of my units are in the city, by downtown, by the universities, by midtown, by the medical center. So a lot of times, they might want to stay in an Airbnb because they have a family member or a friend that's getting treatment, so they want to be close to there. Other than that, maybe they want to enjoy a weekend in the downtown area, and they want to stay here. They just want to be close to the downtown area. So we try to make sure that we're accommodating to those folks. For our screening process, we ask questions that make sure that, hey, if you're local, you're not having ill intentions. On top of that, we do have instant booking. We have instant booking on. We do require you have a full profile, including your government ID. If we have to, I actually haven't had to do this, but I've know some people that haven't really issues with, like, big issues with bad guests and tearing up their places. And I would say one of the things that they look at is they look at self check-in. Like, they look at these units, they say, okay, it's self check-in. Okay, we're not having to meet with anybody. We can get away with this and that. So I would tell people, man, even though you offer self check-in, even if it's a self check-in process, take that self check-in option off your listing and set it to where you'll be given keys, or you'll meet up with somebody to give keys or whatnot, because that will deter them, right? That will say, okay, oh, we got to meet with somebody. That'll at least help with people that want to throw a party, make kind of go another route or not pick your unit because they have to meet with somebody, but still have the self check-in process when you usher guests in. Other than that, I mean, on top of that, we definitely don't do one night stays on the weekends. We do 2 night minimums. I know some people do one nights because I know Airbnb likes one nights, but we do one night stays where we don't do one night stays on the weekends. When I first got started, I was getting a lot of people that just book on a one day on the weekend to throw a party. Once we made it a 2 night minimum on the weekends, that really helped that killed that. So a lot of those things, all those things we're doing to make sure that we get the right guests in our property for sure.
And how do you handle when someone does cause that party? So like, you said that there was, the concierge or the person on the front basically called you and said, hey, you got all these people. Is that relationship now with that apartment like ruined? Are they going to kick you out? Like say, hey, you dropped it, that was your chance and now we're going to end the lease. Like, how do you handle that type of situation?
So, especially I'll give you that situation for an example. I definitely had to go in the next day to go talk to the office, and I just kind of explained to them that it was that situation wasn't supposed to happen. They did not drop me. They just said, "Okay, it's fine," because neighbors complained, and I before I even got to the neighbors had already complained about it. So I just talked to them, and they helped me curate that relationship, um, and I ended up still having that unit for I finished off the lease. And so after that lease, I did have to move out of that unit because they went under new management. So that was the only reason. So they switched out like the entire staff change. That's another thing with rental arbitrage you got to be mindful of. The entire staff change, they say, hey, we are cutting off this much amount of our corporate leases. We're not offering this much corporate leases anymore. So yeah, you'll have to move, whatever. And so yeah, so but it's about the relationships. It's about making sure that you're genuine, that you're communicating with your landlords. And so yeah, I mean, just keeping that relationship and keeping that open line of communication definitely helps. And even when bad things happen, something unfortunate like that happens, just make sure that you're having that transparency with them will definitely go a long way for sure.
And what are you facing right now in your business as you're scaling? Because you're also taking on, you said you're doing about 4 remodels. You have about 3 more master leases that are coming available. So now you're getting towards that 20 range. What's kind of your stress point right now, and where do you see this kind of going as you add on more properties?
I would say I think the biggest stress point is probably on the side where I'm remodeling these properties because there's just so much that goes into that. I recently had to let go of a contractor and I just brought in another one. And so, unfortunately, when it comes to contractors, by the way, there are more bad ones than good ones. So you really have to find a good one and take care of them and hang on to them. So I think that's probably my biggest stress point. But outside of that, then it's just kind of furnishing these properties and getting it going. But I definitely see my goal is to when I get to a certain amount, when I reach that 25 mark in Houston, then I feel like I've made a good stake here in the city and I'm branching out to another market for me. So I'm still growing this thing. My goal is to grow this thing and really build this business and build it to scale and build it to, to a bigger company, honestly. And so I see this thing getting big. I see short-term rentals as a great cash flow maker. I see it as something that's here to stay. I see the need for it. People, we're not in the business of just, this is not just a business that we're just doing. I mean, we're serving people. We're providing experiences for a different type of experience for people. So this is definitely something that I see going for the long term. And even now, I'm helping a lot of people do it. I've done I've done master classes that always sell out whenever I do them. Now I'm helping a lot of people get into this business as well. So it's been good.
Like Houston, the Texas area, like I hear a lot of people, and there's been a lot of growth in short-term rentals in Texas, Houston, Dallas, all these areas. What do you really think that there is that there really is such a need for more short-term rentals, or I mean, is the demand really meeting the supply, or is there oversupply and now the demand is just kind of tapering off? Like, how do you see that working? Where since you started to where it is now?
Yeah, I think Honestly, first of all, I wholeheartedly believe that there's no shortage of good hosts. For the hosts that are doing it right, for good hosts, I don't believe that there's a shortage for good hosts. Um, I definitely do believe, especially, and it also depends on what kind of property that you have. I do see a different type of demand for my bigger units than my smaller ones. The bigger units tend to attract more. The views on the bigger units are more. Um, so that's why I like my bigger units that sleep eight or more. So I definitely do believe that the demand will increase, even though if the supply increase, I do believe that the demand will still increase to match the supply. Um, from what I'm seeing, even like when something, if I get a cancellation right now, like the last cancellation I had was a couple of days ago, within 4 hours it was booked again. You know what I mean? So um, I definitely do believe that because more and more people, I think right now about 30 to 40% of people that book on Airbnb, it's their first time using the platform. That's why I think that if people can actually get to where they're actually doing this hosting thing right, they're providing a great service for people. They're providing not only a good experience, but a nice unit. They're providing units that meets the needs of these travelers. That people will stick to this platform more. People will stick to the short-term rental economy more. And so I think that's why I think that there's, if you're a good host out there doing it the right way, you're definitely helping the economy as a whole, and you're bringing more demand into the marketplace. So I definitely see a future in it 100%.
Do you think that an investor, because you started off doing the BRRRRs, and probably there's a lot of people that are looking at that as like, this is just a cash cow, like I'm gonna take I'm just gonna get in there so I can make some extra money. Do you think that those people really can get into the world of short-term rentals and provide a really good experience? Or is it because you're the guy that's going out there, you're managing, you're self-managing, you're furnishing the properties, you're a real estate and hospitality business? Do you think that it's because of that hospitality mindset that you're able to? Or do you think that people that are just real estate focused and just trying to squeeze as much money as they can out of a deal are going to be able to really do well or profit?
Right. I think that if you're just one of those folks who are just like, you know what, I'm just throw something out there. I'm trying to squeeze as much cash flow as I can. I just want to see what this thing's about, whatever the case may be. I think time will tell on your sustainability. I think having that hospitality mindset, and that's the thing. That's one of the things I had to learn, that this is not so much just a real estate business. This is a hospitality, actually more so than a real estate business. And I had to really switch and change my mindset to the hospitality mindset and think about the experience that they would have there. I think keeping that in mind is what's going to help you be sustainable. I believe that if you're just kind of here to just kind of squeeze out as much as you can and not keeping that hospitality mindset in mind, then time will tell, and you will eventually realize that okay, it's not, I mean, not say that you'll be weeded out, but you realize that you won't get as much bookings. Your cash flow is decreasing because you're not providing that experience, and your reviews are gonna really speak loud. And then time will tell, like it will eventually. That's why I do believe that there are no shortage of good hosts. There's room for those who are doing it right. So that's why I believe that having that hospitality mindset is really what's going to birth that sustainability and help you go and stay in this business for the long term, 100%.
Do you think that all just comes down to the reviews? So let's say there's an investor that's like, hey, I just want to throw a property out there, I'm gonna, I'll handle the messaging, it'll be okay, and then their reviews start taking a hit. Do you think that only the people that are able to sustain those, 5-star reviews are going to be able to, really keep up in this business? Or do you think that it's okay if, not every review is going to be a 5-star?
I mean, not every review is going to be 5 star, and that's understandable. But I think for those who are able to sustain as the most 5 star reviews as you can, those would be the ones that have that sustainability. But it's not just the reviews, right? There are other things, like especially if you're looking to scale this business. If you have one unit, then okay, maybe you can't handle the guest messaging as they come in and whatnot. But if you're looking to handle the guest messaging for all the units that you have, you'll realize that your units will take a hit just in terms of performance goes. That's why you have to add systems for. So it's not just reviews; it's those who are actually able to implement systems and implement technology and things that'll help you run the business, that'll free up the time that you need to actually like focus on other things like what I call income making activities, like picking up more units and things like that. On top of that, like your listing itself, the pecking order, when somebody is looking to book an Airbnb, there's a certain pecking order that goes into that decision factor, right? And that one is the pictures. Like people, they fall in love with your pictures first. And so it still surprises me to this day when I look at listings without professional photos. It's still mind-boggling to me to this day. I want to invest that extra $200 or however much it costs to take pictures. Then the next thing is your reviews. Like, yes, the pictures actually has that slight edge over the reviews. And so then it's your reviews, and then it's your listing itself, the description of how you lay it out and whatnot. So I think a lot of those things kind of come together to help that sustainability. And so I definitely do believe that the reviews definitely matter, and that's a huge factor. But it kind of matters on like it all kind of comes together. What kind of systems do you have? Are you actually being attentive? Like, is your response rate high? Are you getting the most out of your listing to actually stay relevant and stay as high ranked as possible? These are all the things that matter in terms of sustainability and staying relevant for long term.
Now, you see and you talk to a lot of people, you host the meetup groups, these master classes, and you see new people that are coming in. Are these people that are like in your market? Like, how much would you say are like professionals, and how much would you say are just people that, think that they can make a quick buck and, that they can start profiting from this business?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. When I talk to people, it's both people that are professionals. They're probably already in the real estate space, like myself, like I was, and they're looking to add this strategy to something that they're already doing. Maybe they have traditional rentals, or maybe they do fix and flip, but they want to keep some of their assets and make them short-term rentals. And so I talk to those folks quite a bit, and I actually like those folks because they kind of already have that mindset. It's like, okay, this is entrepreneurship. This is something that I want to last. This is cash flow that I want for the long term. What do I need to do it the right way to make sure that there's sustainability here? And then there's those folks that, oh, I heard Airbnb is a good way to go, or I've heard, that I could make more money doing it this way, whatever the case may be. I want to, how do I do this? Or I want to get into this. I want to get into this. So I get a little bit of both, honestly. A lot of folks that are brand new and just want to see if they can make extra money. And some folks that are professionals that really want to take this thing and really build the business out of it. Not to say that there are the folks that are brand new that are really serious about building the business. I still talk to a lot of those folks as well. So I think it's a kind of a mix of both. What I do stress to people is that, look, if you're gonna get into the business, then do it right. Like, I want you to actually be a successful host, because I am big on the short-term rental, just the economy as a whole. I think if guests are having bad experiences with hosts, then they are going to be turned away from using platforms like HomeAway and Booking.com and Airbnb, and they're going to go back to hotels. Because I do believe that our biggest, yes, there is direct competition within your space and your market, whatever the case may be. But our biggest competition, I believe, are really the hotels, to be honest. So that's why I tell people, like, if you're gonna do it, then let's make sure that you do it the right way, 100%.
If you could go back and you could start from scratch, what would you do differently?
It was interesting. When I was talking to somebody when I first got started, and he was mentoring me in a way in this business. And when I told him what I was doing with my house, he told me, he said, "Man, are you sure you want to do that? Because that's a big undertaking for your first one." He recommended me to just make that property a traditional rental for 1 year, do a rental arbitrage for my first one, do a studio or a one bedroom, get my foot in the door. It's a much smaller project. I can get to the cash flow a lot quicker. It's not that much money. It won't seem so overwhelming. So he said, do that first, and then make your house a short-term rental after a year. But by the time I was already talking to him, I was halfway into the furnishing process. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna kind of see this thing all the way through. I'm already deep off into it, and so that's why I decided to do. And I'm glad I did. But to be quite honest, he was kind of right, because it was overwhelming. It did seem like a lot. It did seem like a whole lot for your first one. Furnishing that 3 bedroom house, I forgot how much I spent. I think I spent about, at this time, I'm buying everything retail. I'm not really, I was looking for deals, but I was just buying everything that I thought was nice. I didn't really, my furniture was retail price, all that. So I think I spent about 15 grand to furnish that house. Probably maybe a little bit more than that, maybe like 16. Um, it was a little bit overwhelming. I think, I wouldn't say that I would have done it any other way, but I definitely understand what he meant. I felt what he meant. I think my journey has been unique, and I honestly, my journey has brought me to where I am now. I made mistakes, I've had a lot of wins. I've made mistakes. I've learned from them. I've adjusted. I've pivoted. I don't know if I would change anything really. I think if I could change anything, I probably would have went faster, even even faster than I did. If that was the one thing I could change, I would have probably went bigger faster, if I could change anything.
And what's one question that you have in your business that you'd like to ask another professional host? Maybe someone that's at the same kind of place as you and doing something different, or someone that's at that next level that you're trying to get to.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, that next level, right? When you get to that next level, you're at 50 units or whatnot. That management structure looks totally different I'm sure from what I'm doing right now. That's the kind of knowledge that I want right now. I want to talk to folks 50, 100 units. And I have people, I know folks that have that much. There's certain circles that I'm involved with, but man, those are the folks I want to pick their brain, because when you're at that level, 100 units, 80 units, that's a whole different process. That's a whole different structure, and I want to know what that looks like, because that's what I'm getting into. That's the goal.
And specifically, what about that scale?
So how does, first of all, your company structure, right? How does a company structure look like? Who are your team members? Who's the next person in charge, like that CEO? And then where does it break down from there? How many team members? Because I know people probably do it differently. Even the people at scale that probably have that many units, they might have a less staff than this other person does. This other person might utilize technology more than anything. So I really want to find what works for me in that space, and what that pecking order looks like. How exactly is inventory managed at that scale, at that level? How is inventory managed? How many assistants, how many VAs are involved? How, is it broken up in a different, like a districts, or general manager for these sets of properties, these, just that entire structure, because I'm actually really looking forward to getting to that level. And so those are the folks that I want to sit down and let's have dinner, and let's talk, let's chop it up.
Nice. And what's the best way that someone can reach you, TJ? If anybody has any questions, they're in the Houston area, they want to meet up with you or talk shop. What's the best way?
Absolutely, man. I'm super active on social media, especially my Instagram. The YouTube page is coming pretty soon, by the way. At TJ Tijani, nothing complicated, just my name, at TJ Tijani, on Instagram. Definitely find me there. Feel free to shoot me a DM. Definitely hit that follow. And I love engaging with people that engage with me. So at TJ Tijani on Instagram, 100%.
Awesome. Of course, I'll include links in the show notes of this page. Thank you so much, TJ, for taking the time. And until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting.
Thank you so much, Julie. Have a blessed day. Thank you so much, Host Nation. I appreciate it.
Hope you host benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to hosts that have been featured in these episodes as well as the community, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation.